I had lived in Sunset Ridge for 6 years before the madness began. Our neighborhood was peaceful, quiet, and predictable, until the day Karen moved in across the street. The kind of person who makes HOA meetings feel like courtroom trials. The kind who inspects lawns with a measuring tape. The kind who thinks her opinion is more powerful than actual written rules. I had always kept my distance from her, and I assumed that would be enough to stay out of trouble. But I was wrong. So wrong. Years before Karen arrived, I had installed a large solar array on my roof, 12 high-capacity panels connected to a storage battery and a small inverter station behind my garage. People usually thought I installed them just for my house, but the truth was a little bigger than that. I had built a system that powered all the neighborhood streetlights. It started during a severe power shortage 3 years ago. The city's old grid kept failing, and our neighborhood would go dark for hours at a time. Tired of stumbling through pitch-black streets at night, I volunteered to power the streetlights myself using solar energy. HOA agreed, the city approved it, and the whole community appreciated it. Everyone, except the upcoming storm named Karen. She arrived in Sunset Ridge like a gust of angry wind, complaining before she even unpacked a single box. She hated the shape of my mailbox, the height of my trees, the way my recycling bin looked too blue, and above all, my solar panels. They ruin the aesthetic of the neighborhood, she said during her first HOA meeting. We look like a science lab, not a residential community. The HOA president explained calmly that the panels were approved years ago. Karen didn't care. She started staring at my roof every time she walked by, arms crossed, lips pursed, as if the panels personally insulted her. I ignored it because I had dealt with difficult neighbors before. How much trouble could one annoyed woman cause? I underestimated her greatly. One Saturday morning, while I was out running errands, Karen executed her master plan. She brought out a large bucket of cheap white outdoor paint, climbed a ladder she had dragged across the street, and covered my entire solar array in thick, chalky strokes. Every inch, every cell, every panel. A neighbor recorded her and tried to stop her, but Karen responded with, "I'm doing the neighborhood a favor." What she didn't know was that she had just shut down the entire neighborhood's lighting system. It was around 5:40 p.m. when I noticed something was wrong. I pulled into my driveway and saw dried streaks of white covering my panels. For a moment I thought it was bird droppings or dust, but no. It looked deliberate. It looked malicious. My stomach dropped. Before I could even examine the damage, my phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from neighbors. Lights aren't turning on tonight. Is the system down? Are you okay? Something's off. Someone said Karen was on your roof. My heart tightened. I immediately climbed up to confirm. A thin layer of sunlight reflected off the thick white paint. The panels couldn't absorb anything. They were dead. What the? I whispered as I ran my hand over the hardened surface. From across the street, Karen stood proudly on her porch, sipping lemonade like she had just saved the world. "You can thank me later," she shouted. I climbed down and walked toward her. "Karen, did you paint my solar panels?" "I covered up that ugly eyesore," she said without guilt. "It was ruining our street's charm." I took a deep breath, trying not to lose my temper. "Those panels power the neighborhood streetlights." Her face froze. What? The streetlights," I repeated. "The ones that turn on every night. The ones that keep the neighborhood safe. The ones connected to the solar grid I installed." Her lemonade nearly slipped from her hand. No, nobody told me that." "You never asked," I said. At 7:10 p.m., the sun fully set, and the street remained pitch black. Kids playing outside hurried home. Joggers stumbled on uneven sidewalks. Dogs barked at the sudden darkness. The peaceful neighborhood felt eerie, almost abandoned, as if the night swallowed everything whole. People came outside with flashlights. Some tested the streetlight poles, tapping them, checking wires, trying to figure out what had happened. Then, slowly, every head turned toward Karen's house. She shrank behind her porch railing as whispers grew louder. 2 neighbors approached me. Did Karen really do it? Is this why everything's dark? I didn't want drama, but the truth needed to be said. Yes, I answered. She painted all the panels. Gasps echoed down the street like a wave. Within minutes, a small crowd formed, demanding Karen come outside. She pretended not to hear, but when someone knocked on her door loudly, she had no choice. She stepped out, trembling. "You shut down the lights for the whole neighborhood. What were you thinking? You could have caused an accident." Karen tried defending herself. "I didn't know. I thought they were personal panels." You still aren't allowed to destroy property. Someone yelled. You didn't even ask, added another. Her excuses collapsed one by one until she stood there silently, eyes wide, trapped by her own arrogance. Meanwhile, I contacted the city maintenance team. They promised to send an inspection group early morning but warned me. Solar panel damage like this can cost thousands to repair. If it was vandalism, we'll need documentation. I had the video from my neighbor. Karen's face turned pale when she learned that. The next morning, the city engineers arrived. They climbed the roof, inspected the panels, and wrote in their official report. This damage appears to be intentional vandalism resulting in complete system failure. The HOA board gathered later that afternoon for an emergency meeting. Karen sat alone at the end of the table, twisting her fingers nervously while the board president read the incident aloud. When he finished, he looked at Karen. Do you have anything to say for yourself? She swallowed hard. I didn't know they were important. You destroyed private property, he said, and put the entire community at risk. The decision was unanimous. Karen would pay for full restoration of the solar panels. She would pay a fine for violating HOA property rules. She would publicly apologize to the neighborhood. Her voice shook as she stood in front of the community that evening. I'm truly sorry, she whispered. I made a mistake. A big one. No one clapped. No one cheered. But they accepted the apology. Within a week, the repairs began. Old paint was stripped, damaged cells were replaced, and the panels slowly returned to life. The night the lights turned back on, the whole neighborhood cheered. Except Karen, who closed her curtains tightly. From that day forward, she never looked at my roof again. In fact, she avoided eye contact entirely. She learned a heavy lesson, the kind that comes with a bill high enough to humble even the loudest HOA warrior. And me, I kept doing what I always did, powering the neighborhood quietly, peacefully, and responsibly, only now, with a new understanding. Even solar panels aren't safe from a determined Karen. I always believed that no matter how peaceful a neighborhood might be, all it takes is one person to disturb the balance. In Sunset Oak community, that one person was Karen. She was the self-appointed queen of the HOA, though no one had elected her to anything. Still, she walked around with a clipboard like it was a royal scepter, searching for rule violations with the enthusiasm of a detective who had nothing better to do. In truth, she had one obsession that overshadowed everything else. She hated anything that wasn't aesthetically pleasing in her eyes. Unfortunately, the thing she hated the most sat right on my roof. My solar panels. They weren't ugly. They weren't broken. They weren't against HOA rules. They weren't even new. They had been installed 4 years ago, long before Karen moved to the neighborhood. But Karen decided they destroyed the harmony of the street. She complained during every meeting. These panels look industrial, she'd say. They make the street appear less peaceful. They reflect sunlight too strongly. They might lower property values. Each time, the HOA president calmly reminded her. They are approved installations, and they are connected to the community grid. But that last part always went over her head because Karen never listened long enough to understand anything. She was too busy preparing her next complaint. Everyone in the neighborhood knew what powered the community, the solar system installed on my roof. The system provided energy for the streetlights, the security cameras at both entrances, and even the walkway lamps near the playground. It wasn't just allowed, it was celebrated. People thanked me every winter and summer when energy outages hit other blocks but our streets stayed bright. But the only person who didn't know or didn't care was Karen. That's what made the disaster even worse. The day the trouble began. It was a warm Saturday morning when Karen decided she'd had enough. While I was away for work errands, Karen stood on her driveway with her hands on her hips, staring at my roof like it had personally insulted her. According to neighbors who later told me everything, she suddenly made an announcement. Today I'm fixing this neighborhood's biggest eyesore. No one understood what she meant, not until she returned dragging a ladder, a thick roller brush, and 2 full gallons of heavy white outdoor paint. A few neighbors tried stopping her. Karen, you can't do that. It's not your house. But Karen had the confidence of someone who truly believed she was always right. I'm not destroying anything, she snapped. I am improving the neighborhood. And she climbed up and began painting, without hesitation, without permission, and without any understanding of what the panels actually did. Thick, sticky strokes of white paint covered the sleek black surface of each solar panel. One coat, then a second, then a messy third that dripped down the edges. By the time she came down, the panels looked like slabs of white concrete. Karen admired her work proudly. "That looks much better," she said loudly. The neighbors stared at her, horrified but speechless. The moment everything went wrong. When I returned home around 6 p.m., the sun was low, casting a warm glow on the houses. But something felt off the moment I parked. The first thing I noticed was the ladder lying on the ground. Then the paint bucket. Then the roller. Then, I looked up. My panels were completely white. At first, I thought it was dust or maybe bird droppings. But as I walked closer, my heart dropped straight to the ground. "No, this can't be real," I whispered. I climbed up to the roof, touched the surface, and felt the dried, rough texture of heavy paint. Every inch was covered. Not even a tiny part of the panel could absorb sunlight anymore. The system was dead, and that's when my phone buzzed. Streetlights aren't turning on. The walkway lights won't activate. Cameras at the main gate are offline. Is everything okay with the solar system? All the messages came at once, one after the other. I closed my eyes. My heart raced. Karen had not only ruined my panels, she had shut down the community. When I looked across the street, she was standing proudly on her porch, arms crossed, smiling like she had won a competition. "You're welcome," she shouted. I walked up to her slowly. "Karen, did you paint my solar panels?" "Of course I did," she said confidently. "They were an eyesore. Now they match the neighborhood." I took a deep breath. "Those panels power the entire street." Her smile cracked. What? The streetlights, the walkway lights, the cameras. All of it." Her face froze. Her mouth opened slightly. Her lemonade almost slipped from her hand. "You didn't tell me that." "You didn't ask," I replied. And right at that moment, the sun finally set. Darkness swallowed the entire neighborhood at once. Street after street, lamp after lamp, a full blackout. People panicked. Children screamed. Cars slowed down. Someone tripped on a curb. Dogs barked. A runner fell near the park path. The peaceful evening had become chaos. Neighbors poured out of their homes with flashlights. They examined the poles. They checked switches. They tried calling the city. But then whispers started. "Karen did it. She painted the panels. This is her fault." And all eyes turned toward her house. Karen stepped back slowly, fear replacing pride. The night everyone confronted her. The neighbors gathered, maybe 20, maybe 30 people. They weren't shouting, but they were frustrated, stressed, and tired. "Why would you touch someone else's property? You shut down the whole community. Do you know how dangerous this is? You could have caused an accident." Karen stuttered, her voice trembling. I just wanted things to look better." A mother stepped forward with her child. "My son fell on the dark sidewalk. Was that worth it, Karen?" Karen's lips trembled. I didn't know. "That's the problem," someone said. "You never know. But you always interfere." Karen broke. Her shoulders slumped. Her confidence evaporated. She turned and walked inside without another word. The inspection and the judgment. The next morning, the city electrical team arrived along with the HOA board. They climbed the roof, examined the panels, took pictures, scraped the paint, and shook their heads repeatedly. "This is severe damage," one engineer said. "These panels weren't partially blocked, they were smothered," said another. The report they wrote was clear. Intentional interference leading to full solar system shutdown. Now it was time for the HOA meeting. Karen sat in a chair at the end of the table like a child caught stealing cookies. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. The HOA president read aloud. "You caused property damage. You shut down community utilities. You put residents at risk. And you violated at least 6 HOA rules." Karen whispered, "I'm sorry, I didn't know." But the board didn't soften. "Your ignorance does not excuse your actions." Their final decision: she would pay for full solar panel restoration. She would pay an HOA fine. She would replace damaged batteries. She would issue a written public apology. Karen nodded in silence, tears filling her eyes. The aftermath. Over the next week, technicians repaired the damage. The paint had ruined 3 panels completely. 2 had to be replaced. The rest needed deep cleaning and solar cell checks. The bill was enormous. Karen paid every dollar. The night the streetlights flickered back on, the neighborhood cheered. Kids ran outside again. Runners resumed their nightly jogs. The entrance cameras blinked alive. Life returned to normal. As for Karen, she never complained again. Not once. She avoided eye contact with everyone and walked past my house like it carried a curse. She learned her lesson the hard way. Aesthetics mean nothing if you destroy what keeps the community running. And I learned something too. No matter how strong solar power is, it's never as dangerous as a determined HOA Karen. Most people install solar panels to save on electricity bills. I installed mine to save my entire neighborhood. 4 years ago, Sunset Valley suffered from constant power cuts. Summer heat waves overloaded the city grid, winter storms knocked out lines, and our street would go dark for hours at a time. Tired of waiting for the city to fix it, I built my own solar network, 12 industrial-grade panels on my roof tied to a high-capacity battery station behind my garage. After approval from the HOA and the city, my system became the official power source for all neighborhood streetlights. It worked flawlessly. Every night, the lights turned on automatically, keeping everyone safe. The whole neighborhood appreciated it. Everyone except one person, Karen. She moved in only 6 months ago, and from day one, she treated the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. She hated anything she didn't understand, and she understood very little. But her biggest enemy was my solar system. She complained every chance she could. These panels are ruining the vibe of the community. They look too technical. They're lowering curb appeal. I'm sure they aren't even legal. The HOA told her repeatedly. They're fully approved. They are vital for the community. They power the streetlights. But Karen didn't listen. Karen never listened. She convinced herself she knew better than engineers, electricians, and actual laws. And that delusion led to the most expensive mistake of her life. The day Karen went too far. It happened on a bright Sunday morning. I was away visiting my brother for a few hours. Meanwhile, Karen stood in her driveway, staring at my roof like it offended her existence. According to a neighbor, she said out loud to herself, "These panels are hideous. Someone has to fix this. If no one else will, I will." And with the bold confidence only a professional troublemaker possesses, she dragged a heavy ladder across the street, carried a paint roller, and hauled a full bucket of thick white exterior paint. Neighbors shouted at her, "Karen, don't. You can't touch those. Stop. That's illegal." But Karen responded, "I know what I'm doing." She climbed onto my roof and coated every one of my solar panels with thick, pasty white paint, layer after layer, until the once beautiful black panels were buried under a chalky mess. She didn't stop at a thin coat. She covered them completely. She sealed them. She suffocated them. By the time she climbed down, she looked proud, like she had restored beauty to the neighborhood. What she didn't know was that she had just caused thousands of dollars in damages. And plunged the entire neighborhood into darkness. The chaos after sunset. When I returned home around 6:15 p.m., a few neighbors rushed over, panic in their eyes. "You need to see your roof. It's bad." Karen did it. I climbed the ladder quickly and froze. White. Everything was white. Every panel was completely ruined. I didn't even need to run tests. I knew instantly that the panels couldn't absorb a single ray of sunlight anymore. Without sunlight, there was no power. Without power, there were no lights. And the sun was already setting. At 7:02 p.m., it happened. The streetlights didn't turn on. The walkway lamps stayed dark. The security cameras blinked off. The entrance gate lost its power indicator. The entire neighborhood fell into pitch black silence. People came outside, confused and scared. Children cried. A jogger tripped over the curb. A family lost their dog temporarily because the park path was completely dark. And in the middle of all this chaos, every eye turned toward Karen's house. She peeked out from behind her curtains, realizing, slowly, painfully, what she had done. The big reveal. I walked to her door and knocked. She opened it halfway, trying to look innocent. "Yes, Karen," I said calmly, "you painted over my solar panels." She stiffened. "Well, yes. They were an eyesore. They also power the entire neighborhood," I replied. Her jaw dropped. Her lips trembled. She whispered, "They, what?" "They power every streetlight, every walkway lamp, the cameras, everything." Her face went pale. The realization hit her like a truck. I didn't know. "You didn't ask," I said. Neighbors gathered around her porch, demanding answers. "You shut down the whole community. Our kids were almost hurt. My husband fell in the dark. The entrance cameras are offline. You had no right to touch those panels." Karen kept repeating the same thing. "I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know." But ignorance didn't fix the darkness. The city investigation. The HOA immediately called the city. At 9 a.m. the next morning, the city electrical inspection team arrived. They climbed onto my roof. They scraped small paint samples. They tested the solar output. They wrote notes. They shook their heads. And finally, the lead engineer stepped down and said, "This is severe damage. The paint has infiltrated the cells. At least 4 panels are permanently destroyed." He wrote the official conclusion. Intentional vandalism causing full system failure. Karen's eyes filled with tears when she heard the word vandalism. The HOA emergency meeting. That afternoon, the HOA board held an emergency meeting in the clubhouse. Every seat was filled. Every neighbor wanted justice. Karen sat alone in the front row, sweating, shivering, completely defeated. The HOA president began. "Karen, you physically damaged community property. You interfered with essential utilities. And you caused thousands of dollars in losses." Karen tried speaking. "I'm so sorry, I didn't realize." The president raised a hand. "Realizing afterwards does not undo what you did." Then he read the city report aloud. Intentional vandalism. Karen gasped softly, covering her mouth with shaking hands. The HOA members then announced the penalties. 1. Karen must pay the full cost of repairs and replacement. This included removing all paint, replacing ruined panels, restoring the battery system, and recalibrating the grid. Total estimate: $18,700. Karen almost fainted. 2. Karen must pay an HOA violation fine for trespassing, damaging property, and bypassing community rules. 3. Karen must provide a written and public apology to me and to the entire neighborhood. 4. Karen would be removed from all HOA committees. She would never again influence community decisions. When the meeting ended, Karen stood up slowly, tears falling down her face. "I'm truly sorry," she whispered. "I let my anger and pride blind me." No one shouted at her. No one insulted her. But no one comforted her either. Some lessons must be learned the hard way. The repair and the aftermath. It took 5 full days to restore the solar system. 4 panels were replaced. The remaining 8 were deep cleaned and inspected. The battery system was recalibrated. The grid was tested 3 times. The cameras were rebooted. Finally, on Friday night, at 7:05 p.m. The streetlights flickered back to life. The walkway lamps lit up. The gate cameras activated. Children cheered. Neighbors clapped. Life returned to normal. As for Karen, something in her changed. She stopped acting like the queen of the neighborhood. She stopped inspecting lawns. She stopped complaining about paint colors. And she never, not once, looked at my roof again. Whenever she passed by, she walked fast, head down, as if the panels were silently reminding her of the most expensive mistake she ever made. Final lesson: my solar network had survived storms, outages, and harsh seasons. But it almost didn't survive one stubborn HOA Karen. And Karen learned a lesson she would never forget. Never destroy something you don't understand. And never underestimate what a single roof can power.